A person's last words say a lot about them. Check these out. Here's the first one. I'm bored with it all. Winston Churchill. That's what he said. His last words that he was recorded saying. Love one another. That one's from George Harrison. No, that's fitting. The Beatles. Love, 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 right? It's good. Here's one. I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, Leonardo, you really went a little too easy with your life, right? If you ever have a friend like that, like you're like this bum, right? You're like hanging out with Leonardo da Vinci, right? You're like 30-year-olds, you're still living at your parents' house, right? You don't even know how to make your bed yet. And Leonardo's like, I have offended God and mankind. Leonardo. Lighten up, buddy. Okay, here's another one. One last drink, please. Jack Daniel. That's a bit better, right? Yeah, a little more my speed. Okay, and then one more. All of my possessions for a moment of time. Queen Elizabeth I. Interesting, because she had a lot, right? Final deathbed words are interesting, but even more significant are the last planned words that people say. I'm talking about the words that they address to an audience, where they know that they're going to be saying this, and it's the last chance that they're going to have to address them. Jesus, of course, chose his words very carefully before leaving his disciples. In Acts chapter 1, verse 8, it says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. That was a very important instruction. The Holy Spirit would be coming. He says, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. He wanted to be really clear. Some have said that Jesus' last words should be our first concern. I like that. Later in the book of Acts, we see the Apostle Paul leaving the elders in the city of Ephesus. And Paul was traveling a lot. He was getting older. He was making his way to Rome, and he didn't know what was going to happen to him there. And so he knew that this was going to be the last time that he would ever see these dear brothers and sisters in the faith. So look at what he says. This is important. He says, now I know that none of you among whom I have gone about preaching the kingdom will ever see me again. Further down he says, now I commit to you God and to the word of his grace, which can build you up and give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified. I have not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You yourselves know that these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work we must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself, who said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Welcome back to week 3 of the Genius of Jesus. That's our big idea for the day. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. Now, many people are interested to discover that this phrase never actually appears in the Gospels. It's not there. All of the other sayings that we're looking at in this series come out of the Gospels, but this one does not. But Paul reveals that it was a common statement that Jesus made, as he says in that passage, as the Lord Jesus used to say to us, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Now, Paul, when he knows that he's never going to see this group of believers again, whom he loves very dearly, he commits them to the word of grace, it says in that passage, which is to say this gospel message, this story about Jesus and his salvation. But then he makes a specific point to steer them away from greed toward generosity. Isn't it interesting? He has this one opportunity, and you think about all the things that he could have talked about, all of the things that he could have mentioned. And he does mention the gospel, the essence of the gospel, this word of grace. But then he focuses on this whole concept of greed and generosity. Somehow this idea of giving rather than receiving was integral to Jesus' entire message. We don't often think of that, just how important this is to what we call the gospel. And we do in fact see this all throughout Jesus' teaching. I want you to see this morning very clearly. Jesus' teaching on giving and I want us to notice 3 distinct things about this teaching, or 3 things specifically that this teaching brings about. First thing that it brings about is equity. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus said, give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Now you know that this is called the golden rule, right? Do to others as you would have them do to you, which is very much in keeping with the giving and receiving idea. The passage is really connected to the love your enemies passage. If we were to go and kind of look at the entire passage, that topic that we looked at last week, it's all in the same passage here. And so you'll see that all these big ideas are connected together. A little further on in Luke chapter 6, he says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Now, back in those times when someone would go to get grain and you would pay your money, you can imagine in a market sort of situation, you want to make sure you get your full bushel of grain, right? And that's what the language here is talking about. A good measure, pressed down, right? I can see some of you now. You would be there, some of you frugal ones, right? You'd be there and you'd be pushing it down, right? You'd be shaking it, which is what he says here. Running over and even poured into your lap. The stuff that was, right, as you went away with really more than you were supposed to take, and it's falling on you, you're going to lift your robe up, right, and catch the rest of it. This is the kind of measure, he says, you're going to get if you give generously. It's a great picture. Do to others as you would have them do to you. And then he says, for the measure that you use, it will be measured to you. Equity is clearly in view here. Giving is others-focused, and it results in people being treated more fairly. This is one of the big points that Jesus is making here, that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive, because we actually see equity taking place around us. So Jesus teaching that it's more blessed to give brings about equity. Here's the second thing that it brings about. It brings about expectation. Luke chapter 14, it says, "Then Jesus said to his host, 'When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and then you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous.'" And so, guys, this ties in with our lesson on the first being last and the last being first. You see how these are all coming together. Jesus says that the goal is actually not to get repaid right now. And we're like, what? I want to get repaid as quick as I can. Jesus says, no, don't be in a hurry to get paid back. He says that when you give to those who can't repay you, you're actually blessed. In other words, you live with the knowledge that you have a reward coming to you. He says your reward in heaven, the time of the resurrection, it's going to be great. Now, this kind of sounds like something that we call karma today. Some would call it the law of attraction. You kind of heard it even in the preview video, the Man on the Street video that we shot, right? You do good things, you put good stuff out there, and maybe it'll come back to you. But it's different than what Jesus is saying here, and you need to see the difference. You see, karma, law of attraction, these are impersonal concepts, just kind of forces in nature. But this is a very different thing that Jesus is teaching. He's teaching that there's a personal God who watches and who sees what is going on. And he rewards those. You may not see the reward in this life, but you will see the reward at some point for your generosity. And so you need to understand this. Generosity postures us for good things in this life and beyond. It postures us. If you're a pessimistic person, giving is a lifesaver for you. You really need to get better at giving. If you're someone that always sees the glass half empty, you need to get better at giving because it's going to change your expectation. This is the word we're looking at. You've heard it said that a thief trusts no one because they assume that everyone is like them. Well, the same thing is true when you become a great giver. You grow to expect other people to be generous toward you as well, and it makes you have a positive outlook in life. This is not a new concept. You go back a couple thousand years before Christ to the time of the Proverbs, and it says, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. It's not just the law of attraction. It's a personal God who watches, who sees. Let me ask you this question. What kind of expectation are you creating by your generosity? Do you move forward in the day just kind of naturally thinking that good things are going to happen to you because you've done good things for other people? You see, you have the power to set positivity and goodwill into motion. You have this ability. I think Christians all the time downplay the power that they have just with their generosity, just by following this principle of giving before receiving. There's a great story out of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. I want you to see this story because it highlights the truth that we're talking about this morning. Take a look.
I've been homeless on and off for the past 5 years. So it really sucks, but at least I know I can look forward to 11 o'clock when I know I can get some fresh hot pizza.
The first day the Pay It Forward program kind of started was when a gentleman walked in and he asked if a homeless person ever came in short, and he offered to pre-purchase a slice of pizza for the next homeless person. So he gave me $1. I ran out, got Post-it notes, put one up on a wall behind the register, told more people about it. Eventually, a couple days later, a homeless person came in. He had like 65 cents on him, and we told him to just keep the change. It was already paid for. He redeemed one of the pre-purchased slices. So now we've given away almost 10,000 slices of pizza.
I feel, well, welcome. I feel like I almost bought the slice, but I know I didn't.
I try to donate at least like $5 a week, and it's so funny because today I left my wallet and everything home. And I have 78 cents in my pocket, and I just came out, I was like, I'm a little short. They were like, okay, don't worry about it. And that's a really great feeling, so I can imagine how the homeless people feel. And it's just a great thing. And the pizza is good. I'm from New York, so I know what pizza is.
Before I opened up Rosa's, I just worked at a desk job in New York. I showed up every morning, did some computer work, and then, went home. Pretty regular stuff. I wanted to kind of do something new. I saw the success of the dollar pizza stores throughout New York, so I thought I'd open this place up and try my hand at it.
I've been 3 years off the streets. I was 7 years homeless myself as a veteran, and I finally got myself out of the rut, got myself an income, and I want to pay it forward,
Oh, just yesterday there was a guy that came in. He'd been homeless for like 8 months, and I hadn't seen him for like 3 months. And I'm like, yo, where you been at? He's like, yeah, I'm working now. Figured I'd buy a slice for someone else. I was like, that was awesome. Just a couple days prior, I had been like, man, I hope that guy's okay. And it turns out, he's killing it.
We don't always have a chance to come in and get fresh hot food whenever we can. And for people to donate money, towards slices of pizza for us, really made a change in Philadelphia.
In a city with a poverty rate that is higher than all other big cities comparable to it, to see such a show of compassion and brotherly love is really inspiring.
I think it's pretty cool how powerful something this kind of small and simple can be.
Do you see the power that you have to create hope and optimism in the people around you? Do you see how simple it is to create this positive expectation? It's amazing. So this teaching brings about equity, it brings about expectation, but it also brings out, and I love this word, it also brings out emancipation. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other." You can't serve God and money. You see, receiving is a dangerous activity for us human beings. It really is. You've said it to your own kids many times before, haven't you? You've said to them, the more that you get, right, the more you want. And as parents, we become very frustrated because we're thinking if we just supply our kids everything that they want, that they'll arrive at this place of being happy. You just create monsters, right? In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, the wise Ecclesiastes said this thousands of years ago. No matter how much we see, we're never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we're not content. You can have Apple Music and still say, man, there's no good music around, right? Abundance has a very negative effect on human beings. It makes us greedy. Ultimately, what it does is it enslaves us. And this is what's important to understand about human nature. It enslaves us. And that is why Jesus had to challenge his listeners to have only one master, who was God himself. He wanted us to be free, completely free in our lives. Make no mistake about it, guys. You end up worshiping the things that you give your wealth to. If you're taking notes this morning, write that down. You end up worshiping the things that you give your wealth to. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus also said, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now, you've heard that many times before. But have you ever taken the time to actually figure out what your treasure is? Have you figured it out? What's your treasure? Do you know? Renowned Christian teacher Tim Keller says that your true treasure is actually easy to identify. It's the things that you find easiest to spend your money on. Look at what he says. You will always find it effortless to spend money on the things that are your real salvation, your real significance and security, your real God. That's a deep statement. You see, for Tim Keller, when I was listening to him talk about this subject, he said, for him, what's easy to fall into as his salvation, his significance, his security, it's his teaching ability. He's a great teacher. He said, it's very easy for me to kind of fall back into that and to look for that feeling of significance that comes from other people when they say, oh, you're such a good teacher, you're so smart, right? So for him to buy books, it's just kind of like, yeah. He doesn't even have to think twice. He just fills his shelves. Keep reading. My kids joke with me. I didn't even realize this until last Christmas when I was asking them what they wanted for Christmas, and none of them mentioned art supplies. Because for me, I'm like, art supplies is a great Christmas gift. It fosters creativity. But I found out they were talking to each other and laughing, and I'm like, well, let me in on the secret here, kids, right? And they're like, Dad, you're the art supply sugar daddy. They're like, anytime we want art supplies, you'll just buy them for us. And you actually buy good art supplies too, because you value it. We're not going to ask for that for Christmas, because we can get that anytime we want, right? Our kids know us very well. I actually do have a passion. I go into an art store and I'm just kind of like, oh, right? I could buy everything there. What is something that you're always willing to spend money on? We're going to identify your treasure here. Is it vacations? Is it your kids' sports? Heads are dropping, oh boy, right? Is it cars? Is it tech? Gadgets? The newest iPhone comes out, you're like, boom, on it, right? Is it clothes or makeup? Is it concerts or entertainment? You're an event person, right? An experience person. Is it food? Is it alcohol or drugs? What is it that you'll spend money on automatically? You don't need to think twice about it. See, Jesus says that it's more blessed to give than to receive, but often the truth is that we're busy feeding our own desires. We're busy receiving. And as a result, we miss out on the blessing that God has for us. We all know the amazing feeling that we get when we give. And this is the cool thing about this topic, is when we discuss it, you know that feeling. You've felt it before. When you've made that sacrificial, gift to somebody else. And we know that generosity has the power to change the world. I don't think there's a person here this morning that denies that this is a truly big idea that Jesus is teaching. It's huge. The word blessed that he uses, makaroi, in the Greek, it's a loaded word. It actually talks about the state of peace and joy that comes when we tap into God's kingdom. We actually experience God when we give generously of what we have. But here's the thing, we also know that our selfish side tends to win out most of the time. As much as we felt that feeling and we know how good it is to give, we still just continue to feed ourselves, and we spend the majority of what we get on our own desires. Here's a couple stats for you. Ontarians give a little more than half of 1% of their income to charity. A little more than half of 1%. In 2015, it was 0.64%. Don't anybody clap for that statistic, okay? The median charitable donation in 2010 in all of Canada, if you took every person that gives on their taxes and you took the middle person, $123. Wow. It's fair to say we're not really leveraging the ability that we have to change the world here, right? We're not really leveraging this. And so you may honestly be here this morning and you're grappling with this and you're saying, I do want to be more generous. What do I do? This is a question. How then does a person become more generous? How do you do it? Well, the simple answer is you need to experience more generosity. I've got a friend here at Renew who I've known for a long time. And I have to say, going back many years, this friend really changed my perspective as it related to generosity. I won't mention his name. And this person's not a perfect person. He'd be the first person to tell you that. And you may not even need him to tell you that. But just a generous person who would give you the shirt off of his back. I remember even going golfing and stuff, and I was always the type of person that, I pay for what's mine and you pay for what's yours, and, if you buy me something, I'll buy you something back. That's the way I kind of grew up. It was sort of that even-handed sort of keeping count of things, and this guy just sort of blew that out of the water for me. It's like, you know what? If we're somewhere and I have something and you need it, I'm just going to give it to you. And I'm not going to worry about what happens in the future. It really changed me to meet a truly generous person. I got beyond just kind of worrying about all that stuff. And I tell you, it's very freeing. There's a YouTube channel called Simple Pickup. Recently, they had money returned from a charity that they were trying to give to, and so they decided to use the money in a social experiment. They wanted to tip fast food workers and see their reaction. And this is one of the wonderful things about YouTube and the internet, is you can check out a lot of these pretty amazing social experiments. They really wanted to just really surprise some fast food workers. And I want you to see the video. Take a look.
What up, players? A few weeks ago we did a fundraiser, but our money was refunded to us by the charity. So instead, we're gonna give that money to people who are overlooked in society.
Hey man, I have a question. Do you ever get tips here?
Tips?
Yeah.
No.
All right. So the thing is, I feel like people in the food industry should get tips just because people in restaurants do, right? Because you guys work just as hard. I'll tell you what, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 20s right here.
Are you serious?
Yeah. That's for you, man.
Bro. Man, you don't even know how, man, I've been having a hard time paying my rent.
Really?
And this is ridiculous.
Well,
Bro.
glad I could help.
I'm just saying, God bless you, dude. Like, man, you a good dude, man. I appreciate this, man.
Thank you.
Serious? I can have this?
Yeah, it's all yours.
I don't know. Tell somebody before they think I'm stealing money or something.
yeah, let them know.
All I got here is $100.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh my god. You guys totally rock.
Thanks.
Oh my goodness.
How's it going?
That's gonna eat.
How much is it?
184.
That's expensive.
All right. I'll tell you.
You seem just like a very happy person. I want to give you a tip today.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna match that and just give you a 20.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah, no
much.
problem. You know what? I actually got 80 here. And let's make it 100.
For real?
Yeah. No, seriously. So this is for you. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
No.
Yeah. You deserve it. You look like you've been working hard today. Why? No.
I'll tip $1.
No. This is for you. Yeah. Why? No, it's not too much. See, the thing is, we have it left over from an event we're supposed to donate to charity, so now we're giving it to people instead. The tip. No, you shouldn't feel guilty. This is for you. Yeah. Take it. You work here a lot, right? I see you all the time. Today I'm going to do something nice for you and give you a tip. No, seriously.
I can't take that.
Why? No, that's for you. It's leftover money from a project of mine. Yeah. No, I see you here all the time, and I think you do a really good job. And yeah, man. Thanks for the great service.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, I don't know what to say.
No, you don't have to say anything.
Hey, this is gonna sound really random, but I saw you working, and I used to work the graveyard shift too, so I know how hard it is, and I know that you make minimum wage. I have just a little bit of money here. It's 520s, and I want to give this to you.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. It's $100. Here you go.
Wait, why? Oh my god.
Because I know what it's like to work in a place at 2 a.m. and it's kind of scary, so
Oh my god.
hopefully this makes things easy.
Can I give you a hug?
Sure.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Put that in your pocket. I don't want you to get in trouble or anything, but enjoy your night.
I can't believe this.
Did you see that? Did you see what just happened? You see, nothing breeds generosity like experiencing generosity. I watched a bunch of these different kinds of videos with similar things, and you know what? It's an amazing thing. Almost every time that this happened, where the people, like it wasn't in a drive-through window, but where they were physically present, they said, "Can I give you a hug?" And there you saw the magic in action. The girl immediately turns around and gives at least one of those 20s to a homeless guy right there. That's what it's all about, guys. This is the magic of this idea. You see, it's a fact. The most significant thing that you can do to become more generous is to meet generous people. And I would add to that, to meet the most generous person who ever lived. This is your starting point. Jesus is that person. Not only did he say, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also," but then he turned around and he made us the treasure of his life. Have you ever thought about that? Jesus made us the treasure of his life. He left heaven's glory for us. He came down to our miserable planet. He spared no expense for us. He died in our place on the cross. Look at what the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians. He says, "For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you through his poverty might become rich." You see, only grace has the power to make you a truly generous person. And once you experience it, then all of a sudden, wow, you want to do more of the same. It ignites this fire. There aren't many truly must-see movies. I know every movie that comes out, it's must-see, but there's really not too many must-see movies. One of them is the 1987 Danish film Babette's Feast, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. Set in 19th century Denmark, it features an elderly pair of pious sisters who were part of their father's very organic house church. When the girls were younger, of course, suitors came around, but no men were ever good enough for their father, and so the girls never ended up marrying. Decades later, after the father is long gone, and the women are just sort of living a simple existence in Jutland, in Denmark, a woman shows up at their dreary home. Her name is Babette. She carries a letter from a man named Papin, whom one of the sisters had courted years before, a man from Paris who recommends her as a housekeeper to these two women. Well, Babette is fleeing the revolution in Paris, and she offers to work for the family for free. And so they happily accept, and she cooks for them the same bland meals that the sisters have been used to for decades. One day, through a friend in Paris, Babette learns that she has won the lottery. She's actually won 10,000 francs. A lot of money. Enough to return to Paris, enough to start a real life for herself. But in an amazing turn of grace, she chooses instead to stay and to bless this new family that she has found. What the sisters don't know is that Babette was actually the head chef of the Café Anglais in Paris. And so she invites the sisters and the members of their tiny congregation to what she calls a real French dinner. And so they're all very interested. Oh, really? Okay, well, it sounds like fun. Babette begins her preparation, and of course, she is ordering ingredients from all over the world for this feast. And it makes quite a stir in the community, as you can imagine, a small community. They're seeing boxes and livestock and all of these different things coming in, products that they've never seen before, and everyone's whispering to one another. And it creates such a stir that the pious sisters fear that this meal might actually become a sin of sensual luxury. They're like, this could be very dangerous. Father would not approve of this. They agree with the villagers who are going to attend that they will not talk about the food at all during the meal. This is the agreement. Whatever discussion comes up, we're not going to talk about the food. We'll just sit there, we will eat it calmly, under complete control. We will not talk about it. The only problem is one of the sisters' former suitors, now a famous general, happens to be in town and is invited to the meal, knowing nothing about the silence agreement that has been made. And he cannot shut up about how amazing this meal is. He goes on, he's receiving every course that is coming out, and he's looking at it, and he's describing it, and he's tasting it, and he's saying, do you realize how good this wine is that we're drinking? Do you know what's in this dish that we're eating right here? And he's just explaining it all as the group are sitting there. He explains how the food reminded him of a special little place, the Café Anglais that he used to frequent in Paris. Well, the meal surpasses the imagination of everyone present, and afterwards the sisters learn about Babette's sacrifice. They say, what? You had 10,000 francs and you spent it on us? One sister tearfully says at the end of the movie, Babette, now you will be poor the rest of your life. To which Babette replies, an artist is never poor. Guys, it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. What if every one of us is an artist, someone divinely and uniquely equipped by God to bless other people in our own special way, in a way that no one else can, but we were actually designed to bless other people, to give rather than to receive? What would happen if our churches looked less like dry old pious gatherings and more like Babette's feast? Wouldn't that be cool? Where love and generosity flowed like wine and rich, delicious, almost sensual grace. Another course after another course, painstakingly prepared in love and generosity. When the Apostle Paul left his friends in Ephesus for the last time, he could have reminded them about anything. But he chose to remind them to keep living the gospel, and then he said, don't become selfish. It is more blessed to give than it is to receive. I want to give you guys a challenge before we part ways this morning. Whatever campus you're watching from, I want to give you a challenge. I want you this week to go above and beyond in generosity. And I don't care how you do it. Maybe you'll just copy what you've seen this morning. Maybe you'll tip a fast food worker. Just blow their mind, right? Maybe you'll make a good donation to Haiti. They could use it. Maybe make a donation to one of our Syrian refugee projects. Whatever it is. I'm going to be totally honest about what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get you to trust Jesus. This is my goal. Because I believe something. I know that as you experience these ingenious ideas of His, as you really put them into practice, as you really let them work through you and in your heart, that your thinking will start to change. You will start to see Jesus in a different light. You're going to be drawn to Him. Next week, it's the last message of this 4-part series, The Genius of Jesus. It is going to be the biggest idea yet. Don't miss it. We'll see you next week.